Have you ever opened your cloud bill after running a big AI job and just stared at it in shock? Yeah, you're definitely not alone. The economics of AI in the cloud are a completely different animal compared to traditional IT. So today, we're going to break down exactly why that is, and more importantly, how you can actually get a handle on those surprisingly huge costs.
All right, before we dive deep, just a quick heads up. This content is Module 7 of a much larger 15-part tutorial. It's really meant to give you general guidance. It's not financial or legal advice, so please always chat with your own financial, technical, and legal pros before making any big moves. Okay, let's get into it. So let's start with that feeling, that gut punch when the first AI cloud bill lands. We call it sticker shock, and it happens for a reason. The entire economic model for AI is playing by a totally different set of rules than what most of us are used to.
To put a number on it, just think about this. For a typical server, a standard CPU instance, you're probably used to paying what, $1 or $2 an hour? No big deal. But for a high-end GPU, the kind you absolutely need for serious AI, you could be looking at $40 an hour. That is a massive 20 to 40 times jump in cost before you've even really begun.
Okay, so to make any sense of these numbers, you have to learn to think in terms of two completely separate economies. First, there's the cost to build your AI model. That's called training. And then there's the cost to run it for your users. That's called inference. And believe me, these two are worlds apart.
Here's the best way I've heard it explained. Think of your training costs like building a brand new factory. It's a huge, one-time capital expense. It's expensive, for sure, but it's finite. It has an end. Inference, on the other hand, that's like running the factory, 24/7, lights on, machines humming. Each individual prediction might seem cheap, but those costs just keep adding up and up and up forever.
And this is where it gets really eye-opening. You might spend $100,000 to train your model. That feels like the big expense, right? But what happens if that model is a huge success? It could easily end up costing you that same amount, $100,000, every single day just on inference. The cost of running the factory can absolutely dwarf the cost of building it.
Okay, so how in the world do you manage those giant upfront training costs? Well, the good news is you've got some powerful options. Let's walk through some of the most effective strategies out there. Your cloud provider actually gives you a few different levers to pull. You can pay full price with on-demand instances, or you can commit to using them for a while and get a nice 30 to 50% discount with reserved instances. But the real game changer, especially for training, is using spot instances. We're talking about a potential discount of 60 to 80%. That is just massive. Of course, there's a catch. There's always a catch, right? To get those incredible savings, you have to be okay with your instance getting pulled away with very little warning. This means your training job absolutely must be resilient. It means to be able to automatically save its progress, a process we call checkpointing, so that when a new instance is available, it can just pick up right where it left off without missing a beat. But here's the thing. The hourly instance price, whether it's on demand or spot, is really just the tip of the iceberg. There are so many significant, often surprising costs lurking just below the surface that can completely sink your budget if you're not paying close attention.
So what are these hidden costs? What are the expenses that are practically hiding in plain sight, just waiting to pop up on your monthly bill and give you a nasty surprise?
Well, for starters, there's data egress. Just moving those massive data sets out of the cloud or between regions can generate thousands in network charges. Then there's storage. For all your data sets and all those model checkpoints we just talked about, this can easily grow to cost more than your compute. You also need to pay for monitoring infrastructure. And maybe the biggest one of all, the human cost. The specialized, highly paid experts you need to run all of this, that's a huge part of the equation. All of this brings us to the only real way to get your arms around these expenses, something called a total cost of ownership analysis, or TCO. You have to use this framework if you want to see the complete, honest financial picture of your AI project. See, a proper TCO goes way beyond the sticker price. It forces you to account for all the direct costs, compute, storage, network, the obvious stuff, and all of the indirect costs. We're talking about things like the salaries for your specialized team, the opportunity cost of your developers waiting around for slow experiments, and even the technical debt you might be racking up. So how do you do it? It's basically a 4-step process. First, calculate your direct costs. Then you have to factor in those indirect human costs. Next, and this is critical, you have to model for the future. How will your data grow?
When will you need new, better hardware? And finally, and this is key, you have to compare providers based on their overall efficiency, not just their hourly price tag.
And honestly, this might be the single most important takeaway. The provider with the cheapest hourly rate is not always the most cost-effective choice. Think about it. A provider that can train your models 30% faster, even if they charge a little more per hour, could end up being the much better economic choice. Performance is a massive part of the cost equation.
So I'll leave you with this question to think about. Is your organization really prepared to analyze the full economic picture of AI? Because thinking beyond that hourly price and being prepared for this new reality, well, that's the first real step to mastering it.